A major development took place in this country during this week, cancelling the prolongation of the state of emergency. It was reported that this has been in place since 2017, but as far as one can remember, it was in place for a much longer time, since the 1980s, and it continued for decades. Why is this important? In the investment domain, which is our main concern here, political and economic stability is a major factor to attract investments. It is also a major factor for rating agencies and to attract funds. To many, its presence was unnoticeable, yet the symbolism of its ending gives major stability indicators, one of which is the current situation is under control, and we have the ability to face any challenge. Good evening. You're watching The Business Insider here on Nile TV International. I'm Ayman Salah. Our weekly program tackles events affecting economies and business, and we aim to bring you the inside story. Welcome back. Let's start with our first news item for this week. The Cairo Water Week wraps up its events on Thursday after hosting a number of workshops and launching new initiatives. The conference, entitled Water, Population and Global Change, Challenges and Opportunities, brought together policymakers, diplomats, UN agencies, representatives of regional organizations, financial institutions and donors, as well as water experts from public and from private institutions. The third annual EU Union for the Mediterranean Water Investment Forum took place so as to support progress towards achieving water security in the southern Mediterranean region. It is a dialogue platform for policymakers and for stakeholders who share expertise in the development and implementation of large water investment plans and determine regional priorities and how stakeholders can contribute to achieving them. Financing water projects focusing on sustainable financing of water and wastewater was tackled during the event. Second news item for this week is that on the sidelines of the Cairo Water Week, the EU Commissioner for Neighbourhood and Enlargement said that Egypt could receive up to €1 billion from the EU over the next 6 years for long-term socio-economic development and recovery. This is part of the EU's wider €7 billion deployment fund to the southern Mediterranean, and it sets water security as one of its top priorities. The EU will work with the European Investment Bank and the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development to support Egypt's efforts to combat climate change, protect the environment and ensure sustainable food systems, according to a statement by the EU's delegation in Cairo. Over the past 14 years, the EU and European financial institutions have contributed a total of €3 billion to water projects in Egypt, most targeting labor-intensive infrastructure projects to create jobs. We'll be back. Welcome back to the Business Insider. So tonight's topic is the water resource management and development, and I have the pleasure to be joined by engineer Hassan Sha'ban, who's an expert in agriculture and water resource manager, and who's also the vice chairman of Egypt's El Wafd party, one of the major parties in this country, and the former vice chairman of the Farmers Syndicate. A pleasure having you on the show here with us.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
So water resource management and development is our topic tonight. Let's watch this report and then start our discussion. We'll be back.
National Authority for Military Production signed an agreement with 3 U.S. firms on Tuesday to partner on designing, building and managing Egyptian water desalination and wastewater treatment facilities. The 3 U.S. companies will help the Ministry of Military Production, making desalination plant components locally, as well as train production staff on how to run and maintain the plants. Water infrastructure is a priority in the country that seeks to combat water scarcity through new legislation and infrastructure projects covering everything from seawater desalination plants to new and upgraded wastewater treatment facilities. The country's water-saving plan is estimated to cost around $50 billion by 2037. This plan is designed to face challenges such as climate change, which threatens gradually drying up of water resources. Moreover, this is a pressing need to address Ethiopian rigidness and refusal to respect Egyptian and Sudanese rights to safeguard the livelihoods of their peoples by committing to a binding agreement for the filling and operating of the dam. On Tuesday, another development took place regarding water management. The President ratified the Water Resources Act, signing it into law to regulate how the country utilizes its water resources through means including regulations on groundwater management and storage provisions against acts of vandalism near coasts, motorizing the irrigation system, and fees for pumping stations on the Nile and canals. This is in addition to the overhauling of the ailing water infrastructure. The EU, through its member states and the EU Commission, are taking part in funding the infrastructure as well as food and water security projects in Egypt to safeguard long-term socio-economic development and recovery. Talks between Egypt and the EU aim to set a 2021 to 2027 framework that will contribute to sustainable development, particularly with projects including desalination plants, applying renewable energy to infrastructure, rainwater harvesting, and rehabilitating drainage facilities.
All right, so water resource management and development is our topic tonight. Again, let me welcome Engineer Hassan Shaban, an expert in agriculture and water resource management and the former vice chairman of El Wafd Party and former vice chairman of the Farmers Syndicate. A pleasure having you on the show once again. Let's start with the Water Resources Act and the presidential ratification and its importance. How will it contribute to safeguarding the valuable water resource?
See, the growing population in Egypt is really creating a big problem. Our share of water that comes out of the River Nile, which actually represents 97% of our needs, is the same, and it doesn't really change. So with the rapid growth of the population, we're facing a major problem. The percentage of person share per cubic meter is just very low. Right. So it is a must that the country is facing a problem, and we're going to have to solve it by creating a new means of having additional water sources, like water treatment, sewage treatment, recycling, and so forth. And I think we've achieved a lot of success in this particular field.
But what about the legislation itself?
We had the legislation before, and this is a revised legislation. And it's just organizing the water management and protecting the irrigation facilities and so forth. There might be some items, as a farmer, I'm going to talk as a farmer, that might actually apply some pressure over the farmers due to the fact that everything is now being under controlled and digitally controlled. So I think all the farmers will have, if you depend on the River Nile, you're going to have to get a license to use canals and River Nile branches to irrigate your land. And I think very soon this system will be implemented, because the law was just signed a few days ago. Let's wait and see how it's going to be applied, but definitely as the government is, reorganizing everything and modernizing the ways of management, water resources will have to be subject to the same thing. We are really modernizing the water management in Egypt, actually.
So actually the government is practicing its role as a regulator.
Yes.
In different fields. Now, this would create a need to properly manage the utilization of water. If we're going to talk about an analysis of the current situation, what would be your analysis and what would be the main challenges?
My analysis to the situation right now is, reclaiming land from the desert never really stopped, and the government have a very ambitious program to invade the desert and turn it to Greenland. The New Delta, the Reef El Masri projects, all of this. In spite of all that, the amount of water we have is still the same. And we have vital crops to grow to reduce the amount of crops that we import from abroad. So actually, we are in a very tight position right now. Sometimes we're going to have to give up on growing certain crops to match the amount of water to the needs of plants. Like what happened last year when we gave up on growing rice in certain areas to be able to cover the needs of this crop. So right now we are in a very tight position actually with water. But the new projects that the government is implementing, water treatment and so forth, I think a lot of these projects will be allocated in two directions. Human consumption, to recycle water and use it again. In the UK, a glass of water is being used 7 times.
7 times?
7 times. They recycle the water 7 times before they actually use it. And this is for human consumption. So I think the new facilities that the government is establishing as desalinations, which is from treating seawater, or from recycling water drained from agriculture or sewage, it will be an addition to what happened. I think the new station and Bahr al-Ba'r is it's something really very impressive. It will help cultivating like 500,000 faddan in Sinai.
We'll talk about the projects that were conducted, but let me go back to the main challenges. You said number one main challenge is the growing rate of population.
Right.
Which means there is more consumption.
Of course.
And the per capita share of water is decreasing.
Exactly.
Number two is we have the same amount of water. Number three is the vital crops that we need to grow. And number four, I would add, the cost challenge.
Yes, definitely we're going to face a cost challenge because the regular farmer is used to use regular water from free water from the River Nile. But using treated water in agriculture, this is definitely going to be more expensive than what it used to be. So I think there will be a lot of coordination between the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Irrigation to choose the right crops, what to do and what not to do, because I think the economics actually controls is the name of the game. You cannot really just use expensive water to produce a crop that commonly people buy it with, less money. So this might have an impact on the cost of living. So we have to be very careful how to utilize the treated water and what to do with it. Seawater, of course, could be used for human consumption in the areas adjacent to the Mediterranean or the Red Sea area. I have to add to all of this, the makeup of the crops in Egypt will have definitely to change, meaning we're going to have to join countries that are so advanced in genetic agriculture, meaning there is certain crops that grow directly on salt water, like halophyte. This is a family of plants that actually can consume seawater, and the products are seeds that could produce oil suitable for human consumption or human use, and food for cattle. This is probably a cheap way of finding
feedstock.
Right. Also, some of the crops like sugarcane are very hungry for water.
Intensive.
Right. So there is a substitute that we got from South America, from Uruguay and Paraguay. The name of the plant is stevia, which is a plant that actually grows very well in Egypt and uses very little water in comparison with the sugarcane. So we're going to have...
It has a very bad taste.
An aftertaste. The aftertaste, you could deal with that by using it in soda pop products, desserts, and this is very suitable for that. But diabetic people probably use stevia.
They have no choice, yeah.
Right, they don't have this. But we actually need to produce stevia in Egypt, and I hope that the new areas that we cultivate will grow stevia and have stevia plants, factories next to the areas where you have stevia.
So you have if we're going to talk about the opportunities, here, for example, is an opportunity. If you grow such produce at a proper amount, you can even export that produce,
yes,
and use your regular sugarcane,
exactly,
if you will. So you're decreasing your balance,
right?
You're balancing your trade. So this is an opportunity. Where else do we have opportunities when we're talking about water management?
Actually, in my humble opinion, I think we could increase the amount of water that comes from the River Nile by really, as long as the European community is very interested in cooperation with the North Africa countries. I think there is a lot of wasted water, in the Atlantic Ocean and in the Indian Ocean, both. The rate of rainfall in East Africa is huge, and 50% of it actually runs to the Gulf of Aden, and we're not really using it. Or the countries actually like Ethiopia, like Eritrea, like all of these countries that have this excellent
abundance,
right? Actually, if we sign an agreement and all of these countries work together, we might have a system of satellites over East Africa, for instance. This is, for example, over East Africa, and provide it with data on all the reservoirs and dams and lakes, waterfall rates, observe all the weather conditions, and this will be like a maestro to manage water in the whole area, to open gates or discharge from certain dams to others and so forth. It will be orchestrated by these satellites, and we could have a number of projects in the area between the plateau of Ethiopia going toward Djibouti and Gulf of Aden. I mean, countries like Saudi and the Emirates, maybe Israel, if they actually are, they mean well. We might as well, have a joint agreement to construct a number of reservoirs in this area. This will reduce the amount of wasted water that goes to the Gulf of Aden. Same in Congo. You have 400 or maybe more than 400 billion cubic meters that runs to the Atlantic Ocean from the River Congo. All of this must have engineering solutions, and we could utilize it in a better way.
Let me bring you back home a little bit here and talk about, let's delve into the Cairo Water Week. What's your take from that?
Well, actually, I was impressed that we have an international forum in Cairo, really, because this means that the international community is sharing with us our problem, and they're trying to help us solve our problems. And I understand that there is a budget could be allocated to improve our water facilities and desalinations and water treatment. I think this is a good sign, and it's a beginning actually for better communication and better cooperation with the European Union.
How is this domain regulated, and your forecast after the legislation that was issued?
Well, actually, it goes in a parallel line. Actually, with it, they go in parallel because the new law and the new recommendations that were made by this forum, actually they go along together. Hopefully, we will be able to utilize the aid that will be given to us to serve the law and implementing the law with this budget, will make it a lot easier for both the Ministry of Irrigation and the farmer. Go ahead, please.
Do you see opportunities for the private sector?
There is always an opportunity for private sector. We're very creative, but so far we're just, the private sector is looking at things carefully because this is the responsibility of the government so far. Once there is a window open for private sector to contribute, definitely the private sector will go ahead and,
I'm asking this because you've seen the Ministry of Military Production has signed with 3 U.S. companies to start projects, desalination projects and wastewater management and so on. Do you foresee more private sector investments in the field, whether international or local?
Definitely. I think the Ministry of Armament Fabrication, military production, signed an agreement to actually fabricate and assemble some of this equipment in our factories in Egypt, actually. And bringing these technologies to Egypt, this is just a beginning. And definitely the private sector could play a similar role, actually. But once the door is open to bring this technology to Egypt, I think others will follow up. Definitely. Let me, without really mentioning names, at one time, I personally was approached from another neighboring country to buy our sewage water. They wanted to extend the pipeline and buy Egyptian sewage water. Of course, there is a big question mark. Why don't we do it over here ourselves? Because we are in bad need of water. So it did not really work out at that time, but that was, that drew a line underneath this request, and I think we're doing this right now for ourselves.
You also have opportunities when you're talking about the energy sector and renewable energy, notably solar power and solar powering factories, desalination plants, and so on and so forth. You mentioned one of the projects that you mentioned was the Bahr al-Ba'r plant. What would be the main, the highlights, the major projects that you see are major contributors in this field?
Well, actually, Bahr al-Ba'r was just a sample of other, there is similar project that could actually be implemented in Kafr Sheikh and so forth. But I think we are, once we finish our great project of lining all the canals and in the Egyptian countryside, definitely there will be a lot of water saved from seepage, and we will really have similar projects to what happened in Bahr al-Ba'r. I think the new delta could actually depend totally on projects like this, because it's very near to other governments like Al-Gharbiyya, like Al-Ubayya. All of these governors could actually have sewage treatment plants, and this could actually feed the new delta area.
When we're talking about European Union funding, it brings to my mind the agricultural situation in Europe. Where is our opportunity and where is our challenge when we're talking about producing, utilizing water for the production of agricultural crops in order to be exported with such, I wouldn't call it burdens, but new requirements, if you will, on the part of the farmer? You're raising the cost, aren't you?
Right, definitely. This is why we're going to have to be creative. When we got really the greenhouses that we've imported, and we started all of this, that was the beginning of an expensive agriculture. So we needed to choose the right crops and probably allocate these crops to be exported to other countries, to Europe especially. But we needed to coordinate and have a good monitoring system to what should we grow in Egypt that the European markets require without really flooding the market or
depriving your market.
Right. So I think it was an easy way out of it if we actually allocated a large area for flowers and to plant flowers. That Kenya today is a producer #1 in Africa for flowers. They're competing with Holland, actually, yes. So actually, we're closer to Europe, and it doesn't really require the same amount of strict supervision because this is not a food. We start with something like this. We need something that that we could sell. Agriculture is a trade. So there is no point in having a successful, crop without really finding a market for it. So I think choosing the right crops to be able to market it in neighboring countries like Libya, like Europe, like Saudi Arabia, all of these countries, we need to monitor their needs. But before we do that, we're going to have to really look into our local situation, because we need to monitor the areas that we grow in Egypt first, because in a lot of cases we flood the market with crops and we hurt ourselves doing that, because what we offer in the market is way more than the requirement of the consumers, so the price will go down and this will hurt the farmers. So we need first to have a good policy to monitor the areas that we grow from each crop, instead of just leaving it up to everybody to grow whatever they want. So this is number one. We have to control it locally, then connect it to the European market, for instance, to see what is the requirement. I have an experience that I know of. We still grow grapes, for instance, and our grapes is exported to Europe. But once the grapes from South America, Chile, invades Europe, we lose the market.
Why is that?
Because they have a better quality and cheaper. Okay? Though,
despite the distance?
In spite of the distance. So we need always to monitor who is competing with us and what is the right crop at one time.
You've heard of analysts saying that water is a contentious subject. Does it need be as such? Well,
definitely under pressure and challenges, and it could be, but with science and goodwill and good faith, it could be a win-win situation. Like, I hope that our brothers in Ethiopia, for instance, will reason and listen to to the sound of reason, and start to really utilizing their resources to the benefit of the whole area. It will be a win-win situation in this case. I think to a certain extent, yes, it's a contagious, but we could deal with it with science and engineering.
Engineer Hassan Shaaban, expert in agriculture and water resource management, former vice chairman of Al Wafd Party and the former vice chairman of the Farmers Syndicate. Thank you very much for joining us on the show.
Thank you for inviting me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us. See you same time next week. I'm Ayman Salah. Good night.